becomes an undercover agent? When we talk about who becomes an undercover agent, the first thing to know is that no one is forced into this role. There's no assignment quietly slipped onto someone's desk or a superior pulling rank to make it happen. It's a choice, and not an easy one. Every FBI undercover operation starts with someone raising their hand to volunteer. For all the moments that might look thrilling in hindsight, the reality of the work is slow, uncomfortable, and marked by risks that can linger long after an operation ends. Forensic research consistently finds that agents often hit a breaking point at 5 months or more into an assignment, when symptoms of accumulated stress begin to surface. That means the Bureau has to be careful at the very beginning, before anyone ever steps into character. The entry process is designed to prevent people from stumbling into undercover work blindly. Before receiving approval, candidates are subjected to an extensive selection program. They undergo clinical screening by dedicated psychologists who assess their mental resilience, adaptability, and overall stability. There is documented sleep deprivation training at the FBI's undercover school, role-playing exercises where identities are challenged in ordinary conversations, and psychological tests intended to surface stress responses. The system is meant to replicate pressure before the real world does, weeding out people who may appear steady on paper but falter when tested face-to-face. Evaluation isn't about telling the most clever lie in a moment of panic. It's about proving you can sustain another identity convincingly for months at a time. Plenty do not make it past this stage. Candidates often reach their limits during role-playing scenarios that feel low stakes but reveal a great deal: the nervous fidget, an inconsistent explanation, or a laugh at the wrong time. Trainers are blunt about the implications. If someone cracks under artificial conditions, they won't stand a chance when real weapons, criminal suspicion, and permanent consequences are involved. As one former trainer noted, the most telling failures aren't about facts but about impulses. Agents who respond too quickly when accused, oversell their denial, or provide unnecessary details. Those who succeed are often the ones who can let tension hang in silence, holding eye contact without betraying fear. The selectivity doesn't stop there. The program admits only a small number of candidates each training cycle, despite the hundreds of agents who put themselves forward. This isn't about limiting opportunity for its own sake. It's because the Bureau knows how resource-intensive it is to monitor, support, and manage even one person undercover for the long haul. Each operative requires coordination, check-ins, and oversight by safeguard units, which means taking on too many would create unsafe gaps in supervision. By narrowing the stream early, the Bureau ensures its fielded agents are those most capable of carrying the weight. Personal background plays its own role in shaping who advances. The FBI doesn't look only at psychological testing. It examines whether an agent can plausibly blend into a field environment. Someone raised in a working-class neighborhood might seamlessly pass in certain subcultures, while another with polished office habits could stick out. For instance, someone with mechanical skills might adapt effortlessly to a cover as a garage worker, while an agent with little exposure to that environment risks breaking character under even basic conversation. These aren't advantages of luck, they are considered practicalities. Living experience, not just formal training, often determines whether a background story rings true. Movies often present recruitment differently, emphasizing swagger, sharp looks, and daring improvisation. The real process undercuts that entirely. A polished surface means little if the substance doesn't hold. What matters most is stamina, patience, and the ability to sink into an unremarkable persona. Many assignments require adopting the posture of someone broke, stressed, or frustrated with day-to-day hardships, while in reality carrying the stress of high-stakes surveillance. Some applicants falter because they can't maintain these uncomfortable facades without slipping out of character. The psychological screeners note such lapses instantly, and most are eliminated without further consideration. The qualities that remain most prized are patience and composure. The FBI has never wanted thrill-seekers itching for the dramatic sting operation. It looks for people who can sit calm through sudden confrontations, resist the urge to overshare, and demonstrate restraint when suspicion settles on them. A successful undercover career often depends more on quiet, inconspicuous interactions than big cinematic moments. In fact, evaluators highlight that silence itself can be one of the hardest skills to master. knowing how to pause, not over-explain, and let suspicion pass without panic. At the same time, the Bureau isn't seeking emotionless operatives. Authenticity is a requirement. When building connections inside target groups, agents may need to show empathy, share fabricated but convincing personal stories, and sustain those narratives consistently for months. This requires emotional intelligence, recalling details believably, improvising in real conversations, and adjusting tone naturally. Candidates unable to demonstrate this human layer fall short, because even the best memorized script cannot cover for a lack of believable feeling. Family circumstances also factor in. The Bureau considers how an agent's personal life will interact with the demands of undercover work. Assignments often require long periods away from loved ones, straining marriages and family roles. Strong outside support systems may help, but they can also make separation more difficult. Trainers make sure volunteers understand what this sacrifice entails before assigning them to cases. In other situations, an agent's cultural or regional background becomes an asset, allowing them to step into specific environments with credibility that would be impossible for others. In all of this, the same truth holds. Undercover work isn't just an isolated professional task. It reshapes and challenges the agent's entire personal life. Ultimately, while popular stories paint an undercover operative as daring and flashy, the FBI's real approach is measured. Each year, only a very limited number of volunteers are accepted after clearing psychological assessments, clinical screenings, and immersion training. Those chosen are the ones with composure, humility, and convincing adaptability, far from the movie archetype. Volunteers who make it through the simulations take on not only a new job, but a second identity that must be managed constantly, one that blurs with their real life. And once training and evaluations are complete, the agent moves on to the next challenge, constructing a believable cover story. Passing the Bureau's psychological gates is only the first step. The greater test comes when it's time to build an entire alternate life that can survive casual background checks in an era where almost anyone can uncover a contradiction with a few clicks. Building a legend in the digital age. That next stage is where agents begin building what's known as a legend. In modern undercover work, a legend is more than a clever story told over a drink. It's an identity supported by digital evidence, searchable, traceable, and verifiable. Back in the 90s, an agent could get by with little more than a fake driver's license and a rehearsed backstory. But today, information is too easy to access. A teenager with nothing but a smartphone can find missing details in seconds, drawing from old posts, registry databases, or cached profiles. That shift has forced agencies to approach undercover life as something that must be engineered across both real and online spaces, not just spoken into existence. This is where the practice of backstopping comes in. The term sounds technical, but at its core it means layering an alias so that it holds up to scrutiny wherever someone chooses to look. A name alone isn't enough anymore. That name has to appear in old message threads, in casual group photos, linked to a local job listing, or even mentioned in offhand community interaction. Building a legend means crafting a digital past to match a spoken present, leaving a trail that looks like it has been unfolding for years. For editors, one useful way to picture it is in layers. Surface-level posts you might find on a social feed, photos that connect the alias to real-looking people, and deeper community interactions like arguments about sports or neighborhood events. Each layer adds weight, filling out the kind of background most ordinary people already trail without realizing it. Social media has become the front line of this process. If an agent claims to be a middle-aged contractor, their online presence has to reflect the uneventful rhythm of that life. That means dated posts about everyday things, throwaway comments on weather, maybe a back and forth about a sports game years earlier. It has to look accidental, scattered, and boring, because that's how real digital lives develop. A timeline that feels too polished or worse, completely empty, immediately raises suspicion. Blank space can be louder than a lie, because most people have dozens of little traces online that they never even think about. If an alias doesn't, people notice. Even photos require careful construction. Gone are the days when a single headshot in a fake wallet would suffice. Now, a digital legend often needs entire albums, collages, or candid-looking pictures that appear to have been collected over time. Technical teams sometimes curate or quietly stage these images, and in certain cases they lean on advanced editing tools to age a photo or make it look like it was captured years earlier. The intent isn't to create glamorous portraits. It's to build filler content that supports the illusion that this person has been around all along. If someone happens to run a reverse search, the images are prepared to pass inspection without turning up obvious red flags. The FBI and similar agencies have dedicated technical specialists for this work. Instead of stamping out one ready-made account, they create an interconnected system of profiles across platforms. One may be a professional page that lists employment consistent with the backstory. Another could be a dormant Twitter account that follows the local teams an alias would plausibly support. A third could be a forum handle that has left years' worth of small arguments about car mechanics or home repairs. These layers are designed to be cross-referenced, so if anyone digs around, the pieces align across multiple sites. One isolated profile invites doubt. An interlocking web of accounts starts to feel like reality. Still, the pressure is immense because the slightest inconsistency can unravel months of work. Many extremist groups and criminal networks know infiltration is a constant risk, and they have become adept at checking incoming recruits. They'll scan identity databases, call listed employers, or even scroll through a person's online friends of friends to find mismatches. A single gap, say, an employer that doesn't appear in local business registries, can be enough to disqualify or expose an alias immediately. It's not the sophistication of a spy novel that poses the biggest threat. It's often the amateur-level fact-checking that comes free at a keyboard. This tension has created a strange irony. Undercover identities sometimes look more consistent online than real people do. Because backstopped legends are engineered, they avoid the haphazard clutter most of us leave behind: abandoned accounts, sloppy usernames, or forgotten posts. Some operatives even joke that their fake lives look better curated than their real ones. The trouble, of course, is that no matter how neat or ordinary the legend looks, platforms know when accounts are fabricated. Social networks like Facebook and Instagram explicitly ban fake profiles in their terms of service. In fact, companies such as Meta have publicly pushed back against law enforcement impersonations, raising civil liberties and privacy concerns. That means every time agencies expand a legend onto public platforms, they are navigating both security risks and the reality that what they're doing exists in a legal and ethical gray area. Despite those challenges, the most effective legends aren't flashy. They aim for dull because dull blends in. It's much safer for an alias to look like someone who spends their weekends posting about weather or home improvement projects than someone with a dramatic, curated life. The safest cover is the one that seems uninteresting, even forgettable. Credibility comes from those mundane touches, not from striking details that stand out. Constructing such an identity is less about dazzling resources and more about repetition over time. A routine pattern might involve 3 steps: adding in a LinkedIn-style entry with consistent employment, sprinkling years' worth of low-value social posts, and linking those with local interactions that reinforce location or community ties. Each piece looks harmless, but together they provide the corroboration that Payne and other field veterans describe as essential. Without that groundwork, an alias can collapse as soon as someone asks the most basic follow-up question. At its best, backstopping allows the online and offline identities of an alias to merge seamlessly. Targets often test newcomers informally. They don't just ask direct questions. They scroll, they compare, they notice details in online interactions. If an alias has nothing to show, suspicion builds, because everyone else in the group has digital traces that overlap with their everyday lives. Agents are trained to know that every text message, every comment, even a silent absence in a group thread could weigh as heavily as anything they say face-to-face. Nothing about this process feels cinematic. The work involves hours of uploading photos, typing reheated responses to old discussions, or seeding harmless posts over months to simulate casual activity. But for undercover survival, these small tasks hold extraordinary weight. Every routine trace that makes an alias feel ordinary buys time and trust, and every small inconsistency risks it all. Eventually, though, no matter how convincing the legend looks on screen, every operation reaches the point where that identity has to be embodied in person. Profiles, posts, and digital footprints can support an alias, but they can't carry it into a room where suspicion waits. And that moment, When an undercover steps across the threshold to meet those they've been studying online is where digital backstopping meets its ultimate test. The first meeting, walking into the lion's den. The first face-to-face meeting is where an operation either survives its opening move or ends before it begins. No matter how strong the digital preparation, stepping into a room filled with watchful eyes changes everything. Every movement, every word, every stray silence can tip suspicion toward you. In these moments, success isn't about projecting bravado. It's about passing as convincingly ordinary under intense scrutiny. Veterans often compare the sensation to testing ice on a frozen lake. You can't tell how much weight it will bear until you're already walking across it. Picture arriving at a remote biker clubhouse. The car rattles, chosen carefully to match the story that you're not wealthy or careless with appearances. The tactical response team sits blocks away, listening in, but they won't enter with you. In fact, they can't, not without blowing the cover entirely. Scott Payne, a retired FBI undercover agent, recalled that in some fortified clubhouses, teams even had backup plans involving vehicle breaches if he couldn't escape. Plans like that underscore the reality. Support is nearby, but it isn't instant, and in the decisive first minutes you are, in practice, alone. This is where training takes over. The impulse is to stiffen every joint, to betray anxiety with hurried gestures or flat laughter. But tension is poison. Groups conditioned to spot outsiders can sense it before a word is spoken. That's why agents concentrate less on rehearsed lines and more on composure. Shoulders drop, pacing slows, and speech aligns with the rhythm of the room. Blending into that rhythm requires more than costume. It means learning to mirror without mimicking. If you walk into a cluttered garage full of men in worn denim, no one fits who shows up in pressed dress pants. At the same time, mimicking one individual too closely invites suspicion. Instead, agents absorb the cadence of the group. When others pause between sentences, they pause too. When a joke elicits leaning back and chuckling, the agent joins, not as perfect imitation, but as shared tempo. The goal is immersion at the collective level, so the newcomer feels like one more familiar piece of the environment rather than an exception within it. And then come the challenges, some subtle, others overt. An outsider never slips by without being tested. Sometimes the test is a polite but pointed question about your claimed hometown. Other times, someone demands a look under your car hood for surveillance equipment or asks about a trade skill in a way designed to trip up an imposter. These checks may look casual from the outside, but inside the room, they matter more than any handshake. Paranoia is not a mood. It is the operating principle of these groups. Any inconsistency can close the door, and once that door shuts, it shuts fast. To prepare, agents rehearse facts as if they are reflexes. Bluffing is too fragile when every pause can be studied. Instead, an alias is stocked with lived-in details. The name of a corner store, the football team that plays on Friday nights, or the paint peeling off City Hall. If pressed about where to buy car parts, the agent produces a real store with a complaint about rising prices, maybe even the name of the owner. These aren't improvised lies. They are planted truths, rehearsed until a question triggers recall faster than nerves. Yet the tiniest missteps can be just as costly as failing a direct test. Undercover reports recall instances where something as trivial as ordering the wrong brand of beer raised suspicion. Regulars in certain environments commit to one drink, one label, and if a newcomer violates that custom, it signals more than ignorance. It signals distance. To outsiders, it sounds minor. To insiders, it is evidence. In these circles, culture is detail, and details can end careers or lives. Another overlooked element is atmosphere. In militias and clubs alike, the air often brims with exaggerated toughness, louder voices, sharper jokes, small power moves that establish hierarchy. An undercover presence must navigate this performance without drawing focus. Show too much deference and you look weak. Overstate confidence and you look reckless. The challenge is quiet calibration, balancing humility with control, adapting every smile or silence to the shifting current of the room. Even with cover teams outside, decisions inside the room fall squarely on the agent. Radio signals may be open, but entry is not swift. Payne described being tested in a basement where recruits were branded to demonstrate loyalty. In high-pressure settings like this, his own memory faltered briefly under stress, a reminder of how fragile control can be once physical intimidation is layered onto suspicion. Such moments demonstrate why agents can't depend on rescue at the first sign of danger. Surveillance may monitor the situation, but intervention only comes as a last resort. Technology offers choices, but those choices involve risk. Whether an agent wears a wire or not is decided for each meeting, weighing scrutiny against benefit. Payne reported that he preferred not to be wired in early contact, reasoning that bulges, clicks, or awkward adjustments could expose him prematurely. That kind of tactical judgment underscores how nuanced these preparations are. There is no universal rule, only calculated trade-offs between safety and evidence. And still, success rarely has flair. Passing the first meeting doesn't mean earning friendship or trust. It means leaving upright, unsearched, and with an invitation to show up again. It may be as subtle as a nod across the room, a casual joke returned, or a simple handshake without hesitation. In this context, the most ordinary gestures mark extraordinary relief. Survival here is defined not by triumph, but by an absence of alarm. Every encounter at this stage is feedback. Did your story fill gaps without over-explaining? Did your humor land without being forced? Did suspicion settle and then move on? Success is measured in inches, not in glory. Walk away with the option to return, and you've achieved the day's objective. Over time, the goal becomes consistency, showing your face again, fitting into patterns, letting paranoia dull with familiarity. But none of that is possible without surviving that earliest threshold. First impressions in these groups can be unforgiving, and even a single misstep may block the chance to ever be seen again. What follows from survival is not immediate access, but the slow, incremental process that defines real infiltration.